December 9, 1947. A quiet village in West Java. 431 men and boys lined up in a field. What happened next was so brutal, the Dutch government spent 64 years trying to cover it up. This is the story of the WWII massacre, just one of dozens of war crimes committed during Holland's desperate attempt to keep control of Indonesia. And if you think you know colonial history, what you're about to discover will shock you. Before we dive into this hidden genocide, hit that subscribe button. We're exposing colonial atrocities they don't want you to know about, and YouTube keeps hiding our content from subscribers. To understand the horror of what happened in WWII, you need to know why the Dutch were so desperate to keep Indonesia. For 347 years, the Dutch East Indies was Holland's golden goose. Spices, rubber, oil. Indonesia made the Netherlands one of Europe's richest nations. But in August 1945, Indonesian leaders declared independence. The Dutch response sent 150,000 troops to crush the rebellion. What followed was a 4-year war that killed an estimated 100,000 Indonesians. But here's what they don't teach in history class. Many of these weren't soldiers, they were civilians, executed in what can only be called systematic genocide. If this is already more brutal than what you learned in school, smash that like button. We're just getting started. December 9, 1947. Major Alphonse Wijnen leads Dutch troops into WWII village. They're hunting Indonesian fighters who attacked a Dutch convoy, but the fighters are gone. So Wijnen makes a decision that will haunt history. Every male over 15, farmers, teachers, teenagers rounded up. 431 men and boys marched to a field outside the village. Survivor accounts describe the horror. They made them kneel in rows. Then the shooting started. It went on for hours. 431 innocent civilians executed without trial, without evidence, without mercy. But here's the most disturbing part. This happened one day after peace negotiations started in Rentville. While diplomats talked peace, Dutch soldiers committed mass murder. The Dutch government covered this up for 64 years. If you want to see more suppressed colonial history, subscribe now, because mainstream media won't tell these stories. But WWII wasn't an isolated incident. Meet Captain Raymond Westerling, the Dutch commando who turned mass murder into military strategy. In South Celebes, Westerling pioneered what he called shock therapy, systematic execution of anyone suspected of supporting independence, village after village, thousands dead. His method was simple: arrive at dawn, round up all males, execute them publicly to terrorize survivors. Conservative estimates, 3,000 killed. Indonesian sources claim up to 40,000. The truth we'll never know because Westerling destroyed the evidence. Here's the twisted irony. Westerling was celebrated as a hero in Holland, promoted, decorated, given a pension. This is why channels like ours matter. We expose the war criminals they turned into heroes. Subscribe if you want more shocking colonial truth. But the massacres were just part of Holland's strategy. They also pioneered something horrific. Concentration camps in Asia 6 years before Nazi Germany. Over 108,000 Dutch and Indonesian civilians were imprisoned in camps like Jadang and Jahapit. Starvation, disease, torture. Sound familiar? Camp survivor Eli Tuan Bosma. Children died daily from malnutrition, bodies stacked like firewood. The camps used the same techniques later seen in Nazi Germany. Overcrowding, minimal food, forced labor, systematic dehumanization. The parallels to Nazi camps are undeniable. Yet this history is completely suppressed. So how did Holland hide genocide for 70 years? Simple. They destroyed the evidence and silenced the survivors. It took until 2011 to 64 years later for the Dutch government to finally admit what happened at WWII. Why? Because survivors' families sued in Dutch courts. The verdict was devastating. Holland was guilty of war. Classified Dutch military reports from 1947 to 1949 were sealed for decades. Britain and America knew about the massacres. When finally released, pages were redacted, entire sections missing. Indonesian survivors who spoke out faced intimidation, death threats, exile. The message was clear: stay silent or face consequences. Hit subscribe. We're exposing more colonial genocides next week.